Ebony Montgomery was used to wearing a smile that she didn't quite feel. It was the smile of a 33-year-old African-American woman who had learned to keep her sorrow tucked behind polished veneers. Standing by the grand marble staircase in her immaculate foyer, she watched her husband, Darius Montgomery, gather his briefcase. Sunlight caught the sheen of her satin blouse, reflecting off her smooth dark brown skin with caramel undertones. She tucked a strand of her shoulder-length jet-black hair behind her ear, trying not to let her hazel eyes give away the pain inside. Ebony felt the familiar pang in her chest whenever Darius brushed past her without a second glance. He was 37, towering and broad-shouldered, with deep chocolate-brown skin that hinted at a confident strength. His short, neatly cropped hair never had a strand out of place, much like the rest of his life, or so everyone believed. He was the all-American husband, a Fortune 500 CEO, and a father of 2 beautiful daughters who ran to kiss him goodbye every morning before school. Ebony's mind drifted back to a time when she first fell in love with him. There had been warmth in his eyes, deep-set pools that spoke of ambition, but also tenderness. She'd thought they would rise to the pinnacle of success together, hand in hand. The world saw them as a powerhouse couple, the Montgomerys, unstoppable in every sense. Those were the days when Ebony believed her happiness was tethered to Darius's achievements. She truly thought they'd conquer the world in love. But behind closed doors, Ebony felt like a prisoner in her own mansion, daily subjected to her husband's subtle but destructive mental abuse. The sarcasm, the belittling comments, the carefully veiled threats about their prenuptial agreement. Darius wielded it all like a weapon. Worst of all, Ebony knew he was a womanizer. She'd found lipstick stains on his designer shirts, suspicious receipts tucked in his trouser pockets. Those small tokens of betrayal confirmed her darkest fears. His double life wasn't just rumors or paranoia. It was their cold reality. Yet in her shattered heart, a new resolve began to stir. Something in Ebony whispered that she deserved more than being the picture-perfect wife in a gilded cage. She had ambitions, too, dreams that extended far beyond living in Darius's shadow. As he pressed a perfunctory kiss to her cheek and marched out the door, Ebony glanced at her phone. Social media was a powerful tool, one Darius vastly underestimated. In a world obsessed with the sheen of perfection, it could be used to peel back the layers and expose the rot underneath. Her lips curled into a slight smile. Let him think his prenuptial agreement protected his assets, his reputation, and his pride. He had no idea that everything done in the dark eventually finds its way into the light. Ebony was done being silent. After Darius sped off in his sleek black SUV, Ebony locked the door and leaned against it, breathing out a shuddering sigh. Each breath felt like a small release of tension. The monumental silence of the empty house pressed in on her, yet it also granted a strange sense of freedom. Without his presence, she didn't have to pretend. Ebony's phone vibrated in her hand. It was a message from her sister Tasha, a relentless optimist who never let Ebony forget her worth. Ebony swiped to read the text. "How are you doing this morning, sis? Hang in there. Love you." A small smile tugged at her lips. Tasha's unwavering support was often her anchor in these tumultuous times. She walked through the sunlit corridor, her footsteps echoing against the pristine hardwood floors. The walls displayed large framed photos of the Montgomery family, artful and perfect. Ebony's full lips tightened in bitterness as she passed a portrait where Darius's grin seemed to scream success. She reminisced about how proud she'd been at that photo shoot, oblivious to the secrets that would unravel their marriage. Ebony had studied journalism in college, dreaming of one day reporting hard-hitting stories on network TV She was driven and insightful, with the talent to research and uncover truth. But when she met Darius, a rising star at a tech startup, love swept her off her feet. She gave up her career to support his ambitions, moving wherever the job demanded, playing hostess for his corporate dinners, and caring for their children with all the tenderness in the world. Darius, from a working-class background in Chicago, had seized his destiny with sheer ambition. He rose through the ranks, eventually becoming the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Yet, with that success, came arrogance, entitlement, and a thirst for control. He had to maintain a spotless reputation, the adoring father, the philanthropic community leader, the supportive husband who always offered Ebony the best. Behind the scenes, Ebony lived a far different story. Petty arguments that left her questioning her sanity, endless excuses for his late returns, social media posts that he insisted remain curated to portray a loving household. The truth was, Ebony felt like a prop, an accessory to Darius's empire of illusions. Setting her phone on the kitchen counter, Ebony opened her social media apps. A smattering of messages and notifications greeted her. She glanced at Darius's public profile, packed with glowing articles and congratulatory posts. He appeared unstoppable, garnering likes and hearts from thousands of followers. She bit her lip, thinking, "One day, these followers will know the truth about you." She had a plan. It started small, collecting every shred of evidence, every text, every suspicious charge, every vacant look he gave her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Ebony knew that unmasking a man of Darius's stature wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that if she didn't fight back, she'd drown in the facade he'd created. Seated behind his sprawling mahogany desk, Darius Montgomery exuded power. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, the Atlanta skyline stretched, reminding him of how far he had come. He smoothed a hand over his neatly trimmed hair, the hint of a smirk tugging at his full lips. Here, in his domain, he was the king. No one dared question him, no one doubted him, at least not openly. Across from him sat Kimberly Price, his executive assistant, a 29-year-old with cocoa brown skin and a fashion-forward sense of style. She wore a pencil skirt and a tailored blazer, eyes flickering nervously at Darius. He leaned back, letting the suspense grow before finally breaking into his trademark grin. "Everything is set for the fundraiser tomorrow night, right?" he asked, voice silky. Kimberly nodded. "The catering, the press, the guest list, all confirmed. We just need a final approval on the program, Mr. Montgomery." He flashed a dazzling smile, the kind that captivated sponsors and investors alike. "That's what I like to hear." But behind the veneer of charm, a darker intention brewed. Darius prided himself on maintaining a certain friendly relationship with his female subordinates. Mentoring, he called it. But Ebony knew the reality. More than once, Ebony had caught Darius in suspicious circumstances. The last time was at a company event where he slipped away for far too long with a female colleague. They had re-emerged rumpled and flushed, feigning innocence, yet Ebony's instincts told her otherwise. Kimberly hesitated, then continued. "The media is particularly interested in your stance on minority communities in tech. They want Ebony on stage with you, if possible, since she's such a positive influence." Darius's warm smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Of course, Ebony is always welcome at my side," he replied. "I'll speak with her tonight." The irony wasn't lost on him. He hadn't truly spoken with Ebony in weeks, not beyond the superficial exchange of pleasantries and instructions. Their marriage was a stage production, perfect lines, perfect costumes, perfect illusions. After Kimberly left, Darius unlocked his phone. Numerous messages streamed in, many from women Ebony would never see. Darius knew what he was doing was reckless, but part of him thrived on the danger. He had money, power, influence. He was above the judgment of mere mortals. Even as he texted back a flirtatious reply to a model he'd met at a gala, a tiny flicker of caution stirred inside him. He recalled Ebony's piercing hazel eyes, the way they seemed to see right through his lies. She'd stood by him for over a decade, never once blowing up his carefully constructed world. He believed she wouldn't dare, but the cracks were forming in his fortress. Darius just couldn't see them clearly yet. He was too busy enjoying the spoils of his success. A few hours later, Ebony found herself rummaging through an old keepsake box in her bedroom closet. Her bedroom, spacious and elegantly decorated in soft blues and grays, felt more like a showroom than a personal sanctuary. The bed, draped in a silky comforter, was always neatly made, just like Darius insisted. Under layers of photo albums and letters, she uncovered a small journal with a worn leather cover. Its pages contained her thoughts and dreams from college. She'd used it to write about her aspirations, becoming an investigative journalist, traveling the country, shedding light on injustices. As she flipped through the scribbled passages, her throat tightened. There, in her own handwriting, was the wide-eyed hope she once carried. She paused at an entry dated 12 years ago, the day after she met Darius. He's brilliant, driven, and so attentive. I could see myself building a life with him. Maybe I'll pause my career for a bit to support his dreams. He believes in me too, said he wants me by his side, always. Ebony closed her eyes against the sting of tears. If only she'd known what always would truly mean. Ebony had grown up in a loving but modest household in Birmingham, Alabama. Her parents instilled in her the value of honesty and hard work. She remembered her father holding her hand and promising that faith and perseverance can conquer any mountain. That was a time when Ebony believed wholeheartedly in the goodness of people. She sighed, thinking of her mother, who had worried about Ebony's independence when she chose to become Mrs. Montgomery. "Don't you lose yourself trying to build someone else's dream," her mother had cautioned. Ebony brushed it aside back then, blinded by love and the dazzle of Darius's potential. In the early years, Darius was sweet, bringing flowers, leaving notes of encouragement, praising Ebony's cooking or her sense of style. But as his power grew, he shifted from a grateful partner to an entitled ruler. The once affectionate gestures became public performances, staged to project a wholesome marriage. Behind the scenes, Ebony had to tiptoe around his moods, endure his backhanded compliments, and accept his late nights without complaint. "Your mother tried to warn you," a voice whispered in her mind. Ebony's hazel eyes flickered with a newfound fierceness. Maybe it wasn't too late to reclaim the woman she had once been. The passionate journalist, unafraid to expose secrets and lies. She placed the journal on her dresser, resolving to start a new chapter in it, one that would detail her journey to freedom. She'd gather evidence like the dedicated reporter she had always yearned to be. This time, the story she unraveled would be one that might destroy her husband's perfect facade, but it would also set her free. Ebony glanced out the bedroom window at the manicured lawn stretching beyond the glass. Darius might have built a life of wealth and status, but Ebony now recognized it for what it was, a polished prison. She was done living a lie. The next day, Ebony stepped out of her SUV and onto the bustling sidewalk in downtown Atlanta. Towering skyscrapers provided a concrete canopy overhead. The hum of cars and the distant wail of sirens were reminders of a city always on the move. She clutched her purse a bit tighter, feeling the familiar pang of nerves. She was on her way to meet Tasha at a trendy cafe that served sweet tea and gourmet pastries. Tasha was already seated when Ebony arrived, her warm caramel brown cheeks breaking into a smile. Dressed in a bright yellow sundress, Tasha radiated positivity. She waved Ebony over enthusiastically. "Girl, it's been too long," Tasha exclaimed, enveloping her sister in a tight hug. For a moment, Ebony felt a wave of relief wash over her. With Tasha, she didn't have to pretend. They ordered their drinks. Tasha opted for iced coffee, Ebony a chamomile tea. When the waitress left, Ebony glanced around, ensuring no one recognized her. She leaned in, her voice trembling slightly. "Tasha, I can't do this anymore. The charade, the lies, Darius is getting out of control." Tasha's smile faded, replaced by concern. She reached across the table to squeeze Ebony's hand. "I was worried about you. You look exhausted. What's going on?" Ebony sighed. "He's cheating again. Mental abuse, controlling behaviors. It's all gotten worse. And he's so sure I can't leave because of that ironclad prenup he forced me to sign years ago." Tasha's jaw clenched. "There has to be a way out. Have you thought about saving evidence? You know, the kind that could break his facade?" Ebony nodded. "I have. I'm collecting everything. Text messages, suspicious bank transactions, photos. Social media is going to be my ally. I'm not letting him dictate my life anymore. I deserve better, Tasha." Tasha's eyes glistened with empathy. "You do, and I believe in you. I know it's scary, but I'm here for you. You know Mum would be proud that you're standing up for yourself." That last line made Ebony's heart ache with longing. She blinked back tears and forced a smile. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." Over the course of their conversation, Ebony detailed her strategy. Gather irrefutable evidence, release it in a controlled manner on social media, and ensure she had legal backing. Tasha suggested a reputable lawyer who specialized in cases involving high-net-worth divorce settlements and prenups. Ebony made a mental note to set up a meeting. By the time they parted ways, Ebony felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Walking back to her SUV, she breathed in the warm Georgia air and looked at the city around her. Each tower, each busy street, felt like a testament to perseverance. She thought, if Darius can rise from humble beginnings to become a corporate giant, then I can rise from this prison to become free. Resolve burned in her chest like an ember catching fire. It was only a matter of time before everything he had built on lies came crashing down. That evening, Ebony found herself standing alongside Darius at a high-profile charity fundraiser. The venue, a posh hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and immaculate decor, was bustling with Atlanta's elite. Men in tailored suits mingled with women in elegant evening gowns, raising glasses of champagne in toasts they'd forget by morning. Darius was in his element, shaking hands with politicians and CEOs, flashing that practiced smile for the cameras. He wore a custom-fitted tuxedo, the crisp white shirt contrasting against his deep brown skin. Next to him, Ebony looked every bit the polished wife in a floor-length midnight blue gown that accentuated her warm caramel undertones. Her hair was styled in a sleek updo, delicate curls framing her face. The press cameras clicked incessantly whenever the Montgomerys posed together. "Smile, sweetheart," Darius murmured between clenched teeth, his arm looped around her waist. "People are watching." Ebony obliged, forcing a radiant grin that belied the turmoil roiling inside her. Under the bright lights, they appeared the perfect couple, the embodiment of success and unity. Yet Ebony could barely breathe. As the evening progressed, Ebony drifted among the crowd, playing the role of hostess, exchanging pleasantries with donors who praised Darius for his philanthropic efforts. Their words of admiration stung her ears. If only they knew what truly lay beneath his golden exterior. She glanced at Darius across the room, standing too close to a young, attractive philanthropist, whispering something that made the woman giggle. Ebony's hands clenched around her champagne flute. This was the typical pattern, Darius publicly flirting while Ebony stood by, powerless, but not for much longer. Eventually, she approached Darius, carefully placing herself between him and the woman. "Excuse me," she said politely, catching her husband's eye. "They're about to start the keynote. Would you do the honor of welcoming everyone?" The woman flashed a polite smile and excused herself, but the flicker of annoyance in Darius's eyes was unmistakable. Once they were alone, he leaned in. "That was unnecessary," he hissed. "Don't be so paranoid." Ebony replied calmly, "Just keeping up appearances. You wouldn't want any rumors, would you?" He forced a grin, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. To the onlooking crowd, he appeared every bit the adoring husband. "Of course not, darling." But his grip was a warning. Moments later, the ballroom lights dimmed, and the spotlight fell on Darius. He ascended the stage to deliver a polished speech about community uplift and technological empowerment. His voice resonated with conviction, each word carefully crafted to paint him as a visionary leader. Applause thundered through the hall. Standing in the shadowed corner, Ebony watched him soak in the accolades. Her heart pounded as she discreetly recorded the speech on her phone, not because she needed proof of what he said, but as a reminder to herself of what he portrayed himself to be, a man of integrity and compassion, and to document how far from the truth that image truly was. She slipped her phone back into her clutch, mentally promising, they will all know soon enough. In the days following the fundraiser, Ebony's resolve intensified. Every quiet hour in the Montgomery mansion became an opportunity to search, gather, and document evidence. She began in Darius's study, a room filled with luxurious leather-bound books and impressive art pieces. It reeked of power, just like its owner. Tapping her fingers nervously on the mahogany desk, Ebony debated whether to guess Darius's password on his office computer. She recalled birthdays, anniversaries, or the name of his alma mater. With a tentative keystroke, she typed in the name of his old high school football team. The screen blinked and then unlocked. Her mouth went dry. Darius's arrogance had led him to use a simple, predictable password. She felt both relief and a surge of adrenaline. "Am I really doing this?" she thought. "Yes, I have to." Within minutes, Ebony stumbled upon emails, laced with flirtations sent to various women from a personal account. She found bank statements that contradicted the story he'd fed her about his travel expenses. Her eyes widened at receipts for lavish gifts, jewelry, designer handbags, none of which she'd ever received. She methodically saved screenshots to a hidden folder on a secure cloud drive, labeling them carefully. Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear and validation. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that Darius's world was built on lies. The digital trail led her to a private messaging platform. She froze at explicit conversations between Darius and a woman named Vanessa. Glimpses of weekend getaways Ebony had never known about. Her stomach twisted in anger and hurt. She typed out a few more keywords, uncovering even more damning files. Ebony leaned back in the high-backed leather chair, her eyes stinging with tears. She recalled the man she used to admire, the one who promised her the world. Where did he go? Or perhaps this was who he had always been. She inhaled sharply, remembering Tasha's advice. Document everything. She reached for her phone and began to snap pictures of certain files on the screen. Each click felt like a stab to her heart, but also a step closer to liberation. The hush of the study pressed down on her, as though urging her to move quickly. Just as she was logging out, she heard the distant sound of the front door opening. Panic shot through her veins. Ebony quickly closed down the laptop, cleared her digital traces, and stepped out of the study. There in the hallway stood Darius, keys jangling in his hand. His deep-set eyes narrowed. "Ebony, what are you doing in my office?" She forced a light laugh, a skill she had perfected over the years. "I was looking for a notepad. I just got a phone call I needed to write something down for." He paused, scanning her face. Then he shook his head, dismissing her. "Next time, ask me first," he said sternly. Ebony nodded, scurrying away as if chastised, but she gripped her phone tightly, her heart hammering with a fierce and growing determination. Ebony felt her pulse steady as she dialed the number Tasha had given her. Angela Watkins, a well-respected divorce attorney in Atlanta who specialized in complex prenuptial cases. Ebony scheduled a confidential appointment, careful to ensure Darius wouldn't notice her absence. The next day, Ebony entered a modern high-rise downtown, all steel and glass. She took the elevator to the 25th floor, nervously adjusting her blazer, which contrasted against her dark brown skin in a way that made her feel both professional and vulnerable. Angela Watkins's office was sleek and minimalistic. The attorney herself was a poised African-American woman in her early 40s, with close-cropped hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She gestured for Ebony to sit, her demeanor both calm and commanding. "Ebony, Tasha spoke highly of you," Angela began, her tone gentle yet assertive. "Tell me what's going on." Ebony detailed her life with Darius, the emotional abuse, the affair evidence, the prenuptial constraints. As she spoke, tears threatened to spill, but she held them in check. She concluded by opening a folder on her phone and showing Angela a few of the screenshots she'd collected. Angela leaned forward, a thoughtful frown on her face. "This is significant. With the evidence you have, we may be able to challenge the prenup's validity. It depends on how it was written and whether there was any duress or deception when you signed it." A faint ripple of relief passed through Ebony. "So, I'm not trapped?" Angela shook her head. "You're not trapped. It'll be a fight. Make no mistake. Darius is powerful, but you have a strong case, especially if he's been using marital assets to finance his extramarital affairs." Ebony exhaled a shaky breath, feeling as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She left Angela's office with a renewed sense of purpose. That night, she confided in Tasha. They sat in Tasha's cozy apartment, a small space filled with potted plants and framed family photos. The sweet aroma of incense floated through the air as Tasha held Ebony's hands. "I'm so proud of you for taking this step," Tasha whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "Mom would be proud too." Ebony swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I should have done it sooner, but I was afraid." "You have every right to be afraid, but you're choosing courage, and that's what matters," Tasha reassured her. Tasha sighed and bit her lip, hesitating as if debating whether to speak. "Ebony, I need to tell you something. I heard rumors from a mutual friend that Darius is involved with someone I know. That's why I kept pushing you to gather evidence." Ebony's throat constricted. "Who?" "A friend of mine named Mia," Tasha replied quietly. "She confirmed that she was seeing a high-profile married man. She wouldn't say who, but it didn't take long to figure it out." Ebony closed her eyes, tears finally escaping. Yet even in her anguish, a raw determination pulsed within her. She had the evidence. She had an attorney. She had her sister's support. The foundation of Darius's world was shaking, and Ebony would be the one to bring it crashing down. It was nearly midnight when Ebony created a new social media account under a pseudonym. Her plan was to trickle out pieces of evidence, not all at once, but enough to spark conversation and raise suspicions. The platform of choice was a well-known site where Darius had a massive following. Ebony started by posting screenshots of ambiguous conversations, text messages that hinted at infidelity but didn't name Darius outright. She accompanied each post with captions like, "What would you do if you discovered your spouse was living a double life?" The posts garnered a trickle of views at first, but Ebony knew social media drama could spread like wildfire if nurtured properly. She strategized with Tasha late into the night. "We can't expose him all at once," Ebony said, scrolling through the newly created account. "If we do, he'll launch a damage control blitz, or worse, come after me legally. We have to do this in a way that he can't deny once everything's out in the open." Tasha nodded, her eyes reflecting the same fierce determination. "Let's give the world pieces of the puzzle until they're dying to know the full story." By morning, Ebony's cryptic posts had attracted attention. Curious followers began sharing them, tagging friends with theories and speculation. Some guessed it was a political figure, others thought it was just another viral relationship drama. But Ebony watched the analytics. The numbers climbed faster than she anticipated. Meanwhile, Darius prepared for another day at the office, oblivious to the whirlwind beginning to form around him. At breakfast, Ebony laid out the usual spread: fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, and toast. Their daughters giggled and ate, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their home. Darius glanced at Ebony, who seemed calm but distant. "Everything okay?" he asked, sipping his coffee. She forced a polite smile. "Just tired, didn't sleep well." He shrugged, indifferent. "Well, maybe schedule a spa day or something," he said, already engrossed in his phone. Ebony suppressed a bitter laugh. He was likely checking texts from his mistresses. As soon as the children left for school and Darius headed to work, Ebony logged onto the new social account again. The posts had quadrupled in views overnight, and the private messages were full of people claiming to know the real story. Some were fishing for details, others expressed support. Ebony posted another piece of evidence, a bank statement showing large sums spent on personal gifts, accompanied by the caption, "When a joint account is used for private pleasures." She obscured critical information that would definitively point to Darius, but left enough for the public to speculate. Every beep of notification felt like a heartbeat in her chest. She was terrified, yet invigorated, tiptoeing on the edge of destruction, his and her own. But the alternative was to remain silent, caged by a man who believed he owned her. Let them gossip, she thought. Let them speculate. Soon they'll have no choice but to learn the truth. Within a week, Ebony's anonymous posts had reached critical mass. Speculations flew across the internet. Hashtags emerged, and more people demanded answers. Ebony recognized it was time to unleash the final, indisputable proof. She had video clips, explicit messages, and financial statements linking Darius directly to his deception. Late one afternoon, Ebony donned a crisp white blouse and black slacks, an outfit that made her feel both professional and powerful. She took a deep breath and filmed a short video statement with her phone, obscuring her face, but allowing her voice, resonant and clear, to shine through. "I've shared evidence of a public figure who has betrayed the trust of his family, abused his power, and misused funds meant for joint assets. He manipulates the public, presenting a false image of integrity. The time for speculation is over. Here are the receipts. Let the truth speak for itself." She uploaded the video along with files that unmistakably pointed to Darius Montgomery, his email address, photos together in questionable circumstances, bank transactions. The internet lit up like a fuse to a powder keg. Comments poured in by the thousands, and news outlets scrambled to verify the source. Ebony's phone rang incessantly. Calls from unknown numbers, journalists, acquaintances. She ignored them all, focusing on the moment she'd been waiting for. Then came the text from Darius. "What the hell did you do?" Ebony didn't respond. Instead, she locked her phone, grabbed her purse, and stepped out of the mansion. She headed straight to Angela Watkins's office, where she finalized her divorce paperwork. Hours later, Darius stormed into the law firm's lobby, fury radiating off him. He confronted Ebony in front of Angela and Tasha, who stood by her side. "Do you realize what you've done?" he roared, face contorted in anger. "You've ruined me." Ebony's hazel eyes were steady, reflecting a rare calm. "No, Darius, you ruined yourself. You thought I'd stay quiet forever, but everything you did in the dark has come to light." He raised a finger to point at her, his voice trembling with rage. "We have a prenup, Ebony. I'll see to it that you get nothing." Angela Watkins stepped forward, her tone icy. "Mr. Montgomery, I advise you to calm down. Based on the evidence we've gathered, the court may find grounds to declare the prenuptial agreement invalid. Let's discuss this civilly." Darius's eyes flicked to the stack of documents in Ebony's hands. He realized that the unstoppable tide of truth was surging against him. Security guards approached, sensing the tension. Ebony gathered her courage. She thought of the heartbreak she'd endured, the dreams she'd sacrificed. No more. She turned to Tasha, whose reassuring smile gave her strength. "I'm filing for divorce," Ebony stated with finality, her voice unwavering. "I'm claiming what is mine, and I will not be silenced." Darius stood there, stunned, as Ebony walked away, flanked by Tasha and Angela. She exited the firm's lobby and stepped into the warm Atlanta air, a single tear falling onto her cheek. But it wasn't a tear of sorrow, it was one of relief. She looked up at the sun setting over the skyline. Free, she thought, and for the first time in years, she truly believed it. If you enjoyed this twist-filled journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories by Lane for more unforgettable drama and surprises. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and remember, twists you will not see coming await in every chapter.